Jim Joyce. Welcome
Hey,
to
hey.
Wednesday.
Welcome
Welcome
to
to Wednesday. I do look forward to these now that we're staying consistently consistent, more or less.
Exactly.
Less
Yeah,
than more. I don't know, but
we're one percenters. We're 1% of
that
podcasts.
that's right. That are still above a certain amount of episodes. And then we even forgot to mention, I sent it to Mr. Kendall. Also, I love these lists that just all ultimately try to generate links back to them or they're selling something. But Matthew Holt actually sent me the list, the top 100 digital health podcasts.
We didn't make it.
And we did.
Oh, sorry. I was looking through the list. What number were we?
We were number 45. Matthew Holt, I think, was number 40. And
Okay.
dude, I'm the real winner because I had the DTX podcast on it as well as number 80 something. So
Oh my
I don't
God.
know.
You're a twofer.
A twofer. But anyway.
Well
Also some
done.
exciting news I from you, but I'm just gonna say it
Yeah.
because I thoroughly enjoyed testing ClearIP. I know it's in the App Store. I messed around with it last night on the dog walk. Pretty impressive, very intuitive. So congrats.
Yeah,
I
no,
know
thanks. A bit of
lots
work
of
to do.
iterations to do, right? I'm sure,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah, no, also thank you for testing it. It was one of those when you build an app, you have a certain vision of it, and then the last thing you want is actually customers using it.
well,
So then
listen,
they're
it's
all
always
in.
it's great to be in R&D mode, right? But you need to get out there, and so that was pretty
Your
quick, actually.
feedback was spot on. I'm going to ask a few about our other compatriots to jump in and test it. And
Yeah,
the idea is an idea of ideas. So this is supposed to be for capturing ideas,
yep.
and then we
And then
hopefully
turning them into patents, right? And then
some of them turn into
ultimately
patents.
commercializing, monetizing it.
We manifest people's beautiful ideas into valuable intellectual property. That's our goal.
Love it. And our guest can probably do a whole beatbox pitch. So I'm gonna let Anthony in.
Awesome.
Super excited to have Anthony on. We met in Las Vegas. Anthony and Sammy are the team behind Mindless, right? Mindless, Anthony, welcome. Okay. I just, as I'm letting you in, just the background where we met. And yeah, we met there, and these two great guys, there's like a group of us, just 5 startups, and they're like, hey, we booked a dinner for 2, but maybe they'll make room for 15 or whatever. Here we are
Nice to
now
meet.
on this show, podcast. Welcome,
Thank
Anthony.
you, Eugene. Hi, Jim. Nice to meet you.
Pleasure to meet you. Sorry I couldn't make dinner in Vegas.
We'll go to Yard Bar
Next
again.
time. But Anthony, welcome. I'm super excited. I know we set this up a while back. I think I think almost the moment that I met you, I told Maria, gotta have him on. I think I'm hoping that we'll do a little beatbox, and then by we I mean you. But I think this will be our first beatboxing experience on the show.
Great.
But anyway, but for our millions of listeners and viewers, take us through your life wherever you want to start. And we got time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And it's so fun to be here and meet new people. Jim, before I jump in, obviously, like Orson Welles said, if you want a happy story, it just depends on where you end it. What is it that maybe I can help illuminate around who I am? What might do you think people want to be hearing? And that from your podcast, that is like, oh yeah, that's the juice. Squeeze that.
Yeah, we like probably like a lot of podcasts. If we're talking to an inventor, innovator, founder, person trying to make changes, where the hell did you come from? So go the way back. And first of all, you have like epic names here. We have, how do you pronounce your last name?
Veneziale.
Veneziale. So it feels very Venetian.
Yes. At some point, my family left Venice and moved just outside of Rome. And they were known as the people who used to be from Venice. Not Venezialo, but Veneziale.
Okay, that's so awesome. We love to go back and just do a little quick flyby right into your company. So take us to
school, childhood, where you were born, and then we'll speed you up or slow you down.
Oh, great. So nobody has to press 2x. They can just, I can start the picture. Okay, great. So yeah, it's great to start with my last name. I come from a big Italian family. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. I had a speech impediment growing up, and my brothers used to make fun of me relentlessly. I did go to a speech therapist, but I felt very cloistered. So growing up, it was like, oh wow, how do I stop from feeling vulnerable by not speaking? And then I went to a speech therapist and they, helped me to understand the shape of my mouth and how I could get words out in a way that everyone else was getting words out. So some of my neurodiversity then had some rewiring inside of my brain so that I could fit more into what is the social expectation. And I was like, this is cool. Everyone's out, like, you should all hear this now. And so I started like doing school plays, and my brother was an incredible actor. And so and I'm the youngest of five, right? So all of my brothers excelled in a different thing. And then I was like, if I'm going to get any attention from my parents, I better excel at all of them and get over the speech impediment. But there's a very funny story from my mother who took me to a audition at a local theater here. It's a pretty famous one locally. Like, it's called the Bucks County Playhouse. It's where a lot of out of town tryouts for Broadway shows would happen in the 50s and 60s. I'm not that old, but this was in the 80s.
In Bucks County,
Pennsylvania. Correct. Okay. Yes. So just outside of Philadelphia, between Philly and New York City is where I grew up. And she took me to this big open cattle call audition with all my brothers for Jesus Christ Superstar, which, if you know the show or don't know the show, there's just one part where the chorus is the entire town and they're singing, "Hey, Hosanna," and "Hey." And that's all you had to do was, you didn't even have to sing. You just have to look like you were singing because there was 40 other people up there. And I said to my mom, I said, no way, I will never audition. You will never see me on a stage.
Right.
Flash forward, I started a couple of different production companies. I've been in shows. I produced the original version of In the Heights before it got bought out for a commercial producer and went to Broadway. I created a Broadway show called Freestyle Love Supreme, which is a fully improvised Broadway show, the first and only ever fully improvised Broadway show. I started it with a friend of mine named Lin-Manuel Miranda, who I met back in college. And he and I created this show that is the opposite of what I felt at that moment. That moment when I was with my mom, I was like, you'll never see him on a stage, to I'm on a Broadway show. I'm hosting the show and interacting with over 1,000 people every night. And I'm bringing them into this world where we instantaneously reflect back their suggestions by turning them into rap songs. So that's, yeah.
And what year was that now?
So I started Freestyle, we're overnight sensations. I started Freestyle Love Supreme in 2004 with Lin-Manuel Miranda and a couple of other incredible human beings. And then we went to Broadway in 2019. So that is for those keeping score at home, a 15-year overnight sensation story for Freestyle Love Supreme.
Of course, overnight. Overnight.
It always takes a very long time. Musicals and shows I get on the Broadway typically have somewhere between a 5 and 15-year gestation period. That's just like what it is. And that's not a typical thing. Not many people know that. But when you're creating a new musical, unless you like literally have 3 in the barrel and you make a huge hit at a very young age, it still takes a long time to create a show that uses a lot of voices. Let's just put it that way. It's like a movie.
And what was the inspiration? I'll jump right in, double click on that. What was the inspiration on it? Like, was it like, you started with your childhood, right? And being able to express yourself. And was there a connection there, or was it, kind of what was the trigger and stuff? Freestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, so Freestyle Love Supreme, I really think started when I was a big soccer player and my brother was an All-American and I got cut from my college soccer team. 2 days later, I auditioned for the improv troupe called Gag Reflex at Wesleyan. And it literally is like a sliding door moment. And I went from this concept of seniority based and very stringent pecking order, Italian family / soccer team process to an environment where all voices mattered. Like, they said to me when I got into the troupe, they're like, we're going to learn as much from you as you're going to learn from us.
Okay.
And that was a tectonic shift for me. That was like, whoa, wait a second. Not only is my experience, which is very limited in the world of improv, being valued already at a high level, but it's being considered with the same weight as someone who has been there for 4 years or whatever it was. And that to me opened a huge floodgate of, oh, okay, well, what is it that theater and stage and entertainment might possibly be able to do at this time in the world? And for me, I was really interested in having conversations between classes and races, right? For me, the reason why I do theater is because it's a place to ask really big questions. And the big question that we need to ask in the United States is, how could we possibly look a Black person in the eye in this country after the 400 years of subjugation, slavery, and then not randomized redlining to keep people as basically money. We're just earning money off the backs of Black people. Obviously, my family came over as immigrants in the late 1800s from Ireland and then in the early 1900s from Italy. So I was able to both be outside of that, but then also inside of it. I'm a white person. I appear as a white male in the world. And so I just thought to myself, how do I bring as many diverse perspectives? Like they brought me into this improv troupe and they valued my perspective. How do I do that for improv as well? What's that process? And so for me, it was using the language of hip hop, which is a Black and brown art form. It was born in the Bronx, 1973, August 11th at 1528 Cedric Avenue. DJ Kool Herc, Coke La Rock, putting an after school party together.
I actually had no idea of that history. I knew it was born in the Bronx. That's pretty much it. But the specific time and date, that's
I have to make a connection here though. So as a person living in Ireland, married to a Venetian that went to university in the Bronx, I feel like his favorite
Look at
performance.
Look at that.
Wow. All
Magic.
your worlds are coming together, Jim. This is crazy. Who knew? So so that was
and
it.
whose favorite musical is In the Heights. Like I've ever danced to the play, I mean,
God, that's awesome.
Actually, Anthony, sorry, I'm going to connect one more dot. Yeah. When my parents immigrated from the old UR, but really from Ukraine, we came straight to Washington Heights. I grew up in 189th Street for a number of years. So, and
absolutely. And what another incredible, good morning, Eugene. What an incredible, I think, process that America is pretty unique around, which is taking a lot of disparate people and then allowing them to overlap and learn from and also be repelled by, right? There's nothing like being a new person in an environment in which you feel like, oh, do I belong here? Do I not belong here? And how do I figure out how to belong here? That to me is like the genesis of almost all great creation. I think uncomfort and in some ways necessity brings about great evolution and change.
Right. Insight.
Absolutely. It takes someone outside of, and this is why I think biodiversity and diversity is so important in any, let's call it scientific study / company. The more opinions and various perspectives that get brought to the table, that wisdom of that room will always be greater than any one person. Which is a shame because the myth of America is about great, exceptional individuals. And we are seeing this fight still in this moment right now. So my show, the reason why I created Freestyle Love Supreme and the reason why I created this company, Mindless and Freestyle Plus, is to really illuminate that the wisdom of many is far greater than the wisdom of one. And you just have to get outside of this judging brain of yours to say, I'm willing to take a risk and be vulnerable amongst other human beings. And that's really hard for humans.
Before we get to Freestyle Plus and Mindless, which is how we met, and we'll do the shout outs to the Panasonic Well crew, but we just double clicked improv, right? And we actually had Rachel, our guest. She was taking improv classes. We didn't have her improv on the show with us. But anyway.
We get a music as medicine guest last.
The aspect of improv, was it the first time I don't know, did you take classes? Like, how did you get into it? First time you had to improv?
Yeah.
Were you like deer in the headlights or just started flowing? Take us through that initial journey, right?
Yeah. All right. So there's a couple different routes to go, but this is my favorite story about a hero of mine. And they say never meet your heroes, but it's not true. You can meet some of your heroes and they can still just be the best humans alive. I went to a show called Full Moon, FOLMOON, and that was by Bill Irwin. And Bill Irwin, if you do or don't know him, is one of the foremost actors in the American theater. He goes to Ireland a ton. He's a Beckett. He's a professor of Beckett, and he's like an expert on all things Beckett. He does a lot of Beckett shows. He is also a clown, and that's how he cut his teeth. He started out with something called the Family Circus, and that was in San Francisco, and he's toured all around, but he's also known as Mr. Spaghetti on Sesame Street, and he makes his body do anything. So he's doing a show, Bill Irwin and David Schreiner are doing a show that is on Broadway. There are no words. They're totally mimed the entire show. And it's 6 different segments where they interact with the audience. They even bring audience volunteers up on stage with them, do a fake first date, which is, it's hilarious. And I saw that show and my brain exploded. I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And how could that possibly be happening? Right? How are they creating all of this in the moment? It feels so tangible, feels so immediate. And the audience is just, we were enraptured with them. Flash forward. Yeah, no words. And it's still maybe to this day, one of the best Broadway shows I've ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
Flash forward 30 years, Bill is a guest with Freestyle Love Supreme. He comes out, does a physical stage routine, and then we start rapping based off of what he's doing physically. And I get to tell the story of seeing him in Full Moon and being inspired to do improv, because that was literally the genesis of why I thought improv might be something worth pursuing. Now, that didn't mean the next day I went out and did it. I was just like, because improv wasn't that common then, right? It was just like, what is this art form? Is this even a thing? Right. And then I saw the improv troupe at Wesley and I was like, oh, that's what they did. But I was a soccer player. And so there was no way I would have time to do that. And then I get kicked off the team and I audition, and I remember the audition. I went in with, this guy who I was friends with. His name was Lev Kushner. He also ended up getting into the troupe. And I just remember being like, okay, we're here simply to serve the moment. How do we serve the moment? And so for me, I got pretty focused. It wasn't like a deer in the headlights. It was as though I was the headlight and I was shining it directly on the thing that was most important, which is the suggestion and my scene partner. And I loved that. I loved making my scene partner look good. That's like the only job I ever think I have when I do improv. And I could hear the response, but more importantly, I was fully invested in that emotional and imaginative landscape that we were creating in the moment.
Right. Did you ever have, it seems to me like Eugene and I are a bit of conversational improvers.
Of course.
But it feels like you're operating without a safety net, right? Do you ever feel like, oh shoot, what if the brain just dries up? That's why I would look at these great improv artists.
Yeah, it's funny. That's the human brain natural inclination, is to imagine the worst, and the worst being, oh, I won't think of anything. And then if I don't think of anything, no one else will also think of anything. And everyone in the audience will simply be looking in judgment of me and thinking I'm dumb. That is how our brains have evolved over millennia. It is, because if you were ostracized from a community, it meant the end of you, right? Especially for women, right? So taking that kind of a risk in front of a lot of eyes on you, and typically the only time a lot of eyes were on you were when you were in mortal danger. Like a community didn't look at one or two people, maybe in oral history starting 3,000 years or so ago. Right. But for about 100,000 years, if a lot of eyes were on you, your brain was like, oh, I'm going to die. Like this is, the rock is falling on me. There's a lion behind me. Oh, there's a lion right behind me. Isn't there? So that's not a natural, the natural processing for human brains is to say, don't ever do that. Right. And the truth is there's no mistakes. Like even if you draw a blank, that can be an offer, right? Somebody else on that stage probably isn't going to draw a blank. And so you just allow that to inform the new pattern going forward.
That's beautiful.
So this is the shout of digital health therapy. And since we're still on the topic of improv, I know you were doing some work with UCSF also on what is the neural implications of improv. I can see people's confidence levels, anxiety levels. I don't know what the research you guys were doing and what some of the early outcomes were.
Are you in Pennsylvania? Where are you right now, Anthony?
San Francisco.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay.
The Dublin of California. No, I'm kidding. Jim, where are you, by the way?
Up Dublin.
Okay, you are.
Yeah, Barcelona. Yeah.
Oh, two terrible cities to be in. Way to go, guys. Actually, we're all doing pretty well. Yeah, so I'm in San Francisco. We've been doing some research with Charles Lim, who is fantastic, head of otolaryngology at UCSF. So he does inner ear, nose and throat. That's his focus. He does restorative cochlear implant surgeries. He helps people with regaining hearing, but also if they have balance issues. But he is obsessed with the transportation of sound towards creativity. So he started doing a bunch of neuroscience and different projects where he would be putting professional performers inside of fMRI machines. And he got to a point where he was like, I want to put some improvisers in the fMRI machines, because he was really starting to see a big correlation between your judging brain, which is your dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex, like right back up over here. That part of your brain typically is the part of your brain that's like effortful planning. don't wear that shirt today. You definitely need to get your PhD. You probably have spinach in your teeth. And what if you don't know what to say next? That part of your brain typically is an inhibitor, right? But it's a great inhibitor. I'm not saying it's useful. It's really useful, but it's not always the best part of your brain to be in. And for most of us, 90% of our time is spent in that judging brain, which is oppressive to say the least. There's this other part of your brain, the medial lateral prefrontal cortex, a little bit further down in the front, right behind the eyes. That's your sense of, I know there's a lot of different neurologists out there who are like, there's no such thing. And others who are like, no, call it slow. It's easy for people to understand. But ultimately what it means is you lose track of time. You feel incredibly, like I said before, that scene I was doing with Lev, just invested in that moment and that you are serving the moment. Time just disappears, right? That part of your brain typically is a lot of people are like, that's me at my best. That's me when I'm most creative. That's me when I'm like truly doing the thing I love in the world. And so we want to help people get to that part of their brain because what it does is it also helps with a healthy hypothalamus regulation.
Okay.
So your judging brain is a bit more hardwired to your amygdala, to your fight or flight. So that hardwiring, which is, and I'm sure you all have seen that before, right? Where you're like, there's these three different parts of the brain. There is this sort of stem, the deep mode network. There is the mammalian part of the back of the brain, the cerebellum and a lot of motor function. And then most communications here in the prefrontal cortex. That's what makes Homo sapiens, right? We're like, they're lion gods and we should all pray to it and kill this elephant and give some to lion gods, but then eat as well. And that's incredibly useful because that communication has made us the apex predator in all the globe. But what happens is this part is deeply related to your deep stem, which is where your amygdala is, your reptilian brain. And that thing just wants to survive. Like that's all the stem is really invested in. It's like, oh,
Right.
And that doesn't necessarily make you a great human, right? That doesn't necessarily make you an awesome Homo sapien. It makes you a really good reptile, not a great Homo sapien. So how do we encourage a healthy hypothalamus regulation, which is that thing right between your prefrontal cortex and your stem and your deep mode network that allows your release of serotonin and all these different things that then trigger your body's reaction? Improv, what we found, is an incredibly great tool to encourage healthy hypothalamus regulation.
Got it. And so you put these improvers in fMR machines.
That's right. So you're doing improv in what basically is like an Iron Maiden. It's really unnatural, but they put you in a sarcophagus because they have to have the microphone really close to your face. So you are covered and you're in these giant magnets that are spinning and making noise, the sound of a turbine engine. Like it's a very loud thing. They are spinning incredibly fast.
And Clarice.
That's right. You got the little quid pro quo Clarice. So you're in this thing and you're improvising with the paradigm is set up in the booth. So they're behind 3 layers of giant panels of glass and they're relaying information into your Iron Maiden as you cannot move because the images of your brain are going 1,000 pictures a second. And it's fascinating, right? There's so many things we can pull apart from these different, we basically did 4 different like improv experiments inside of the fMRI. We did from like less improv-y to totally improv-y. And we just found all these really fascinating correlations between how we can help humans with creativity, how we can help them with a healthy hypothalamus regulation, and ultimately cognition as well. So that was the part that like really started to light us up too, which is, these games not only good for you being a human with other humans, which by the way, is huge to help prevent isolation, which is a giant pandemic as well.
Yep.
But they also are really good around mental cognition and holding and retaining information in a different way that's more closely associated with your cerebellum and less with your prefrontal cortex, which is where the plaques and tangles tend to happen around dementia.
Whoa.
Yeah. So many things, right?
Let's think, because you started talking about games, right? So let's jump to Mindless Games. This is how we met. And finally, shout out to Christy and Matt and many others that we met. This was a great experience. And we got to meet people like Anthony, Sammy, and many others. So
that was the best part. So Mindless Games, we have since taken what we know about improv from the fMRI machines and the different learnings and scientific studies that are out there in the world, not just our studies, but there are plenty of other studies as well. Okay. And what we found is that 20 minutes of interacting with these games helps you with that hypothalamus regulation. Okay. So how can we encourage people to at least start there? Because ultimately, we only want people to play like 3 to 5 minutes by themselves. We want the other 15 minutes to be in real life, encouraging gameplay across generations, which is huge as well for people's life expectancy to go up. And not only life expectancy, like that's great, but quality of life, right? Quality of life is a huge, important part of all of this as well. Because if you live long and you're having a terrible life, why? Why? What's the point? But sharing stories in a meaningful way, that's ultimately what some of our games do, right? They not only do they allow you to share stories from your past, but they also allow you to create stories in the present moment that you can then share out later as well. We have leveraged AI to become a scene partner. So the first 3 to 5 minutes of any experience or games that you're playing, they tend to be coaches or AI scene partners that are based on our large language model set. And we've been coaching and teaching, doing improv now for about 12 years as a company. As a consultant, we have reams of data, right? I've trained personally over 15,000 people at the Silicon Fortune 500 companies. My organization has trained over 100,000 people in person, right? Like, how do you scale that? So we were asking that question of how do we scale that?
And this is Freestyle Plus, right? Just making sure.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry. So the consulting brand of our company is Freestyle Plus. That's been in the world for a while. We've been doing a lot of public speaking with them, with Silicon Valley and Fortune 500 companies. And ultimately we found there was great. Let's get them started on that road. And an AI scene partner allows zero judgment. Like people don't feel judged at all by a AI scene partner. They're just like, make up whatever. And I'm just going to say whatever, sometimes for the good and sometimes for a not safe for work environment. But it is typically uninhibited, which is a really important part of this because what you're trying to do is create these neural networks that say, it's okay for me to take these small risks. Low risk exposure therapy, very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy. You're taking small chunks of opportunities to put yourself in an uncomfortable position. Okay. How do we help humans get comfortable being uncomfortable? And these little games are micro bites of getting them comfortable. A game might be, remember when? You're going to take a shared journey with an AI scene partner that you've never taken, but you're going to pretend like you did. Remember that time we went to Dublin? And boy, did we have a crack at the Guinness factory. And now the scene partner the AI will be like, yes, we did. We learned that you have to separate the hops from the barley in order to create the beer. And then you're like, yeah, and we drank all of it. Whatever you want to do, right? However you want to create that scene. But that is a game for you to create and use a couple of incredible improv lessons like yes, and. Building off of the idea that came before you is a huge listening and creative generation tool. But that's just one game.
You said something interesting, the yes and, right? Versus just saying no, right? And I think that's another big piece in our brains that need to be, because the safest place is, a lot of times just saying no, right? And I love your comment on yes and, because it's building on, it's inspiring others. But one, just maybe going a little bit to the Freestyle Plus, and I don't know which hat you were wearing, but whatever hat, whichever way you spin it, it's still Anthony. And what I would just like, I think I was in the front row. So ARP in Vegas had ARP After Dark, I think, where there were 5 pitches, I believe 5. And Anthony and his team, I was just amazed. So a founder would go do their pitch, and then the team would beatbox and rap on stage, redoing. I actually, just side note, Anthony, I pinged Roberto for Frontiers Health in Berlin and Kristen. So I'm going to tag the two of them so they watch this interview. But we got to have your team out there in Berlin because they have startup pitches and this would be so much fun. Just side note.
That's awesome. So Jim, just to give you some context on that and why I absolutely love freestyle. I'll reverse real quick to that moment in 1973 of August 11th at 1528 Cedric Avenue. There is this concept that you could take the break beats and continuously spin them. And that creates this kind of like swell, right? So and this is what DJ Kool Herc did, which is a breakthrough, right? In the concept of how to take a already known song, but make something totally new out of it. That's it. He just sampled those like limited measure or bars and kept spinning them to create a new song. And then Cote LaRock would just use that Caribbean toasting and say, Eugene is in the house. Hey, it's Eugene. He's in the house. And that concept of an MC, EMC, was born over that moment. And he was taking what he heard and saw and was representing and reflecting back to the room, letting them know they mattered. He saw them and he felt them. That's the human condition. We need to feel seen, felt, and heard. And freestyle, when we did that thing, which is like a founder gets up and they say, hey, I've created this new incredible tool that measures somebody's sleep apnea and puts aroma in front of them to allow them to naturally cure their sleep apnea so that they have an auto response. When you smell something, you open up your glottal and your air passageway becomes a bit wider and you eliminate this possibility of sleep apnea. That's what the founder said. And we're like, okay, cool. What is happening? Eliminate sleep apnea. So in that moment, they are like, oh my gosh, they just listened to what I did. They heard me. And now they're reflecting back in a way that I feel well represented by the idea that I had that I'm hoping will change the world. It's a Russian nesting or a Ukrainian nesting doll of exactly what we're trying to do with the work that we're trying to do in the world.
There's an expression that my wife, who Italian, says, specchietto, which is little mirror.
Yeah.
So when someone says something to you, and usually when they say something, you say little mirror, and they're like, it's a reflection of yourself. It's kind of
Specchietto. Non c'è male. Tutto per qualche parte il specchietto. Yeah.
Jim, I'm going to put you on the spot here since we got
awesome.
Anthony with such talent. Jim has a company called ClearIP.
Right.
And he's just out in beta testing, which I had the pleasure of testing, but maybe give, I don't know, 30 seconds what you do and see what Anthony can come up with. 30 seconds. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean,
here we go.
Right.
I love it.
Actually, I'm putting Anthony on the spot, but I think you're used to it.
It's awesome. Okay. And so Anthony, at ClearIP, we turn your beautiful ideas into valuable intellectual property. So we have an app that you're right from your phone. If you conceive of or come up with a new concept or idea, most of those ideas that you come up with, you'll forget to record them. You just won't capture them. Never mind ultimately turning into many kind of patent or filing it. So we allow you to capture the idea from your phone. And then we take the patent process from 6 months or 9 months and lots of money to a matter of days and weeks. But the real beauty of it is that we're doing it right from your phone. So we capture those kind of creative moments. And then we start the process of using AI in the back end to just accelerate and translate the process.
Wow.
ClearIP.
Wow. ClearIP. That's really cool. Congratulations, Jim.
Thanks.
What a great idea. Okay. All right. So I'm going to do my best to reflect back what I heard, but I need maybe both of you to just help with a beat. No, actually, sorry. I'll do the beat, but because there's always like a half
Anthony, my
delay.
name,
not that you
my
can.
name that I didn't introduce myself. I'm DJ Huge the Huge also.
Amazing. Okay, great. Unfortunately, Zoom's not awesome with live music and beats.
Totally get it.
I'll hold one, but imagine the pulse going as well. All right. Dripping like an IV. I got all that needed with ClearIP. Could have just helped represent me. Yes, I'll make sure it's a fine line. Cutting down the patent like my name was Einstein. Could you even do it? Could you manage this? You can do it just from the touch of your phone on an app. That's amazing. Thank you very much, Jim. Joyce, do you want to make a new choice?
Love it. Love it. There you go. That's your commercial, Jim.
Epic. I feel heard.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Time just flies, and we actually thought about potentially asking you to do this in a long form podcast. We did one so far in the 160 episodes, but just time is limited. So next time we'll get you on. So I'm going to pass this to Jim for his kind of last famous question, and let's see where that goes.
Okay, Anthony, so we're blasting into the future, and you're on your way back, and you're taking a little trip with the friends and loved ones, and you're going through Bucks County, and on your way there, you get this little note in the door, and you've been invited to go to a conference in Venice, and they're looking for someone to do a keynote around creating, using improv to neurodegeneratively help cure all kinds of health problems. And they want you to come and focus and talk about this and really bring mindlessness to the masses through your, so you're sitting over and you're giving this talk in Venice, overlooking the beautiful views of
Piazza San Marco.
San Marco Square. And as you're doing it, and outside, it's a sunny day, and all of a sudden you just hear a little kind of tune, someone humming in the background. You realize that the person's beatboxing, and this young man comes walking across the piazza to you, and they says, "Anthony, you don't understand. I have to talk to you. I have to talk to you." So you step off the stage after giving your talk. You say, "How can I help you?" He says, "I'm about to start my brand new company, and it's going to be using music and improv and healthcare and bringing technology together with AI." And you looked at that young version of yourself. What's the one piece of advice you would give him as he starts off on this company?
You can have all the good ideas in the world that you want, but you have to make sure it actually addresses the issue that you think people are suffering from, and be informed by their journey, not your journey. That's great. Your journey is amazing. It's a great start, but their journey should shape the thing that you make, not yours.
Love it.
Love it. Anthony, thank you for making the time. We appreciate you. And for all of our listeners, hit subscribe, pass it on, and see you next week.
Grazie.